We'll do Moedim part 3. Having some fun here. What do you got there to zoom in on, Eric?
See these 3 two-letter words?
Uh-huh.
That's Ayin-Dalet, a hyphen, Ayin-tav, and then this word kuf zadi. Ed, et, kutz.
This must be in the book of Daniel.
Daniel 12.
Yeah, okay.
It says over here, until the time of the end. So, het tav mem ha sefer. Hide the words, it would be samik tav mem, here. Samik tav mem, the debarim, and het tav mem, the sefer, until the time of the end. Ayin-Dalet, Ayin-tav, kuf zadi. I want to show you a couple other things here that we're going to talk about. See this phrase? Moed, Moedim, vechatzi. That word moed, Moedim. The word Moedim is the festivals, and moed is singular for, you could say, festival. And then I'm going to show you another phrase here. This is in Daniel 7. Ayin-Dalet, Ayin-Dalet nun. Remember who said Ayin-Dalet nun was the word Eden. So you have Ed, Eden, and Ayin-Dalet nun, Yod nun, Edenin, Vepeleg, Eden. This phrase, Ed, Eden, Va, Edenin, Vepeleg, Eden, is translated 3.5 years. This other phrase that we looked at over here in Daniel 12, Moed, Moedim, vechatzi, is translated 3.5 years. Now, what you might recognize here is that this word, Ayin-Dalet in Paleo, Ayin-tav, and then kuf zadi in Paleo, is translated until the time of the end. This same word until is the root of the word moed. So as we said before, moed is mem, vav, ayin, dalet, and it's translated as time. This is the word until, this is the word time, and then they said, okay, if you add yod, mem, so it's moedim, it means times. So they're saying this equals 2 years. Moed equals 1 year. So that's where they come up with 3.5 years. But we've just been talking about the word moed, meaning the festival, the appointed time, the appointed place, and that if you are bearing witness of your testimony, you will be a guy who's there at that time, at the Moedim. It doesn't necessarily say anything about 3.5 years, which they say is the time of the tribulation. And they're basing both these places in Daniel, both Daniel 12 and Daniel 7, one of them says something completely different than the other one, and neither one of them are the words for year. Just so as you know, there's more to these matters. Here's another little matter about the word Ayin-Dalet. It said that the Torah and the prophets were until John the Baptist. Are you familiar with that verse?
I've heard it.
Okay. The word until is Ayin-Dalet, but it's also the word for witness and testimony. So the translation that we've been given says, the Torah and the prophets were until John the Baptist, setting up the notion that, of course, they were done away with at the time of John the Baptist because he was the guy who ushered in, as the Elijah, who ushered in the fact that Yeshua is Mashiach, in which case everything is changed. However, if you translate the word Ayin-Dalet as the witness or testimony, then you'll say the Torah and the prophets were the witness and the testimony, thus the validation of John the Baptist, which is to say the opposite of, oh, they were only until then, and then they're, by illustration, they're done away with. Or it was alluding to the fact that they were done away with. Well, this is to say they're not done away with at all, because it was because of John the Baptist preaching and teaching the Torah and the Nevi'im, the prophets. That's what gave him credibility. What is it that gave Yeshua credibility? He came validating, authenticating the Torah and the prophets. That's right. The word Asher or Ashri, or the word Israel is Yod Shin Resh, Yashar, which is to say this is the straight path. So because John the Baptizer, or Yochanan, the mikvah guy, the immerser, because he stood on and taught the Torah, that is what gave him authorization and credibility. But when we translate this word Ayin-Dalet as the word until, it makes it look like the opposite, as if now it's thrown away. So what I'm saying is that the way we translate these words makes a difference.
Oh, words mean things?
Brad Scott has a whole series on words mean things, which is really good to listen to because he tells you about the meaning of the Hebrew words. But here's the thing. In Daniel 12, it says, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Until time of the end. So I've asked quite a few people here and there. I've heard my whole life, ever since I was young, these are the last days, the time of the end. Okay, any second now. Well, Jesus could have come back 30 seconds ago, but how about now? Nope, we missed that one. How about right now? Well, we're still here. How about now? Okay, my whole life has been, any second now, he's going to come back. Everything's been accomplished. Any second. It hasn't happened yet. And now I've found all kinds of verses in the scripture that says such and such is going to happen before the end. And none of those have been accomplished, but I've heard sermons that said, every single thing that was said was going to happen before he comes back has happened, and it could be any second. Not so. It hasn't happened, and I've found so many things that haven't happened yet. I'm in no hurry to think it could be any moment at this point, I'll tell you that.
So, what we've been led to believe about the end days, or the end times, is more a man's wanting this sudden return of the Mashiach to deliver us from where we're at. It's all a fundamental thinking of man.
Well, it's doctrinal fabrication.
Okay.
Which is to say, something that's man-made, manual, made by hands, is where you get the word to fabricate, or to fabric is something woven or made, and it's where you get the word for an artifice, or something artificial, or that which is constructed, concocted, put together, but they're certainly not of Yahweh. Now here's the thing. My whole life I was under the understanding, but it was a wrong understanding. I believed it, but it was not true. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true.
Absolutely.
Even if you believe it with all your heart, it doesn't make it true. Now, I have to count on these words. But if I trust this translation or the interpretation, that also doesn't make it true. And if I see these words, Moedim, Vechatzi, and somebody says, oh, that means 3.5 years of the tribulation. Not necessarily. And then if they show me Adnin,
where's the word tribulation in there?
Huh?
Where's the word tribulation in there?
That's not in there, but then you have to go and you have to look at the rest of the matters. But what I'm showing you is that just because somebody tells you that these words that you can't read because it's in Hebrew say 3.5 years, times and half a time, doesn't necessarily mean that these words say 3.5 years or times and half a time. But you don't know that if you don't read Hebrew.
I don't read Hebrew,
so now
absolutely.
you, the laity, are subject to the clergy, because the word clergy is where we get the word clerk, which is one who knows words. And the laity are those who are too ignorant and don't know the words, and so they're subject to the interpretation. But I want to show you something about this. There's a certain verse that says, take the sealed book and give it to the literate ones and say, read this, please. And the literate one says, I can't read the book, it's sealed. And then he says, take the sealed book and give it to the illiterate one. And the little illiterate one says, I can't read it, I'm illiterate, I don't know books. He says, Lo, Yod, Dalet, Ayin, Tav, Yod, Sefer, Samik, Pei, Resh. This is the word for negative, and this is the word that says to know. Da'at is the word for knowledge. Negative, I understand, I have knowledge. Sefer is the word where we get, this is the word S-E-P-H-E-R, is the way you'd say it in English, is where we also get the word cipher, which is translated as the word to book, the book, or it means to count, or it means to narrate, or to tell a story. I don't know how to read. I am illiterate. But if you don't
read the story.
But if you're illiterate, you can't even read this. So let me show you what the illiterate man said. If you see the letter lamed as a shepherd's staff, it's a picture. And the letter aleph is an ox, the shepherd's staff of the ox, or you could say the authority of the ox, or that which guides and directs the movement. Now, I know, because I'm literate a little bit, that this means no. But if I don't know that, all I can see in the pictures is that the authority that drives the ox is the one who says no. In other words, your father is the one who says yes or no. He's the authority of where we're driving this thing. The one with the authority to say no is the one represented by the letters lamed and aleph. And if the word was written aleph lamed, that is the word el, which means, it's translated God or towards this direction. Yod is a working hand, Dalet is a door, Ayin is an eyeball, which has to do with understanding, Tav is a sign, typically meaning the sign of the covenant, and Yod is a suffix, is another hand. Yod is a prefix, basically says he will, and Yod is a suffix, means my. This one of authority who sets the whole thing in motion, his hand is on the door of understanding my covenant. Whose hand is on the door of understanding the covenant? Samik, Peiresh. Samik, it looks like the mast of a ship. It looks like it's an engineered structure like the trunk of a tree or like a power pole that holds up wires. Pei is an open mouth, or that which causes to open. And Resh is an exalted man, like the Messiah, like the king, somebody who is ennobled. His hand is on the door of understanding my covenant. Here is the place where there's teaching and authority. You could say the engineered structure of opening up the identity of the Messiah. I'm trying to show you that if you look at the word pictures, there's some other way to read the words. And if we just say, oh, it means I don't understand the book, I'm illiterate, that's the way it's translated. But if you look at the individual letters, you realize there's something about the one with authority to open the door to understanding the covenant has to do with this engineered structure. And remember, we said something before about the menorah shape being very similar to the Paleo-Samic. It has to do with the engineered structure of the mouth, that which opens the words of the Messiah. The words of the exalted man are opened by understanding the covenant. But we're not allowed to if we're illiterate. So we have to trust the clergy, and if they lie to us about the engineered structure of the words of the Messiah, or the words of what it takes to become an exalted man, and Yahweh says at the end of the book of Hosea, who is wise and understands these things? Who has the wisdom to see what I'm saying, to seek the face of Yahweh? I'm paraphrasing here. And line up with what he says. It has to do with the only mouth of the Messiah is going to be according to the structure of the words of understanding the covenant. So if a would-be Messiah changes the structure, changes the intention, he can't be the Messiah.
Right.
But this goes back then to say, how would you translate this? Well, if this letter ayin is an eyeball, and this is a door, and this is another eye, and this is a sign, particularly a sign of the covenant, what does the eyeball represent? It means to understand.
Behold.
To behold, to see.
To see. To behold. So if you can comprehend or see the door, hyphenated to comprehending the sign of the covenant, and then there's something about kufzadi. Well, this is simply translated end. It's pronounced cuts, as in C-U-T-Z, something that you cut something off. Literally what this word means, if you put a yod in front of it, is Wake up! Awake! So then you could say, well, the end of what? The end of the world? Like, oh, it's the end of the world. Jesus is coming back. It could be the end of your sleep, the end of your coma, the end of your prison sentence, the end of your
that veil.
the end of the veil of your ignorance.
Right.
If you understand the door and you understand the sign of the covenant. Until the time what? What is understanding the covenant? I would propose, and I have with the Erectology class, that the alphabetic letters, the meaning of the letters of the alphabet are that they identify the Messiah.
The aleph-taw.
The 22 letters of aleph through tav in the aleph-bet are the identity of the Messiah. So if somebody says aleph is an ox, then every time you write a word and you see the letter aleph, oh, there's an ox and there's a shepherd's staff. Well, a shepherd's staff and an ox doesn't tell you anything about the word no, but it's the one with the authority to tell you no. So you have to read into the letters beyond just what the letters mean. But if you sit here and say, to comprehend the door is hyphenated to comprehending the covenant. The covenant, what's the covenant? The Torah. It was given to us on Mount Sinai.
Right.
The word Sinai is actually spelled Samik Yod Nun Yod, and it literally means erudite scholarship. So here, Samik is the engineered structure, like a skeleton, of life. The engineering of life is in studying the words given to us on Mount Sinai.
So Yahuwah led his people to this place of all this knowledge, this understanding right there. What did you say that was?
Sinai.
Repeat it again, what it means.
The word for mount is har. Behold, or revealing the Resh, the exalted man. Behold the Messiah. Projecting a light onto what it takes for any of us to arise to our potential. Then the word Sinai is the engineered structure of life. Samik and Nun.
And that's
Samik
where,
Yod Nun Yod.
So that's where he took the children of Israel when he brought them out of Egypt. There's where he took them, right? He took them to that spot.
To Mount Sinai to tell them the way things work.
This is my plan, this is how it works.
And this is if you go along with this, you will have the blessing be poured out upon you and opened up to you. And if you counter this, if you disdain this, if you work against these matters, you will bring the curse down upon your own heads, which is what's happened for the last 3,000 years.
And you're on your own.
There you go. But here's the point. If you understand the sign of the covenant, I'm suggesting that the letters of the Hebrew aleph-bet, the aleph-bet, the 22 letters, to understand them is to realize that it's not just that aleph is an ox and bet is a house and gimel's a camel and dalet's a door, but that aleph speaks of the eternal one who initiated the plan, bet is the materialization of the plan and the structure of the universe, gimel is the one sent coming from the heavenly realm to the dalet, the earthly realm, dalet being the door, hey, revealing, vav, revealing a look-alike vav, the man, Zion, this particular distinguished one who would be put to the weapon, slain, chet put into the tomb, tet the round stone put in front, yod sealed, there's the first 10 letters, that reveals the identity of the Mashiach. Now, if you comprehend the 22 letters that they reveal the Mashiach, how is that hyphenated to the door? If this means understanding the door, we're left with, what door? Where's the door? If we have to understand that the covenant is the identity of the Mashiach, what's the door? Well, you can look everywhere for the door that the key is going to go into to open up, but Yeshua made it easy for us. He said,
I'm the door.
I am the door. Yeah. Now, for Brother Yehuda to not pay any attention to anything Yeshua said, because he's been misaligned or misinterpreted as Jesus the Christ, who was some Greek or pagan deity, or however you want to deal with that, with doing away with the Torah and different festivals and different Shabbat, so that he's missed the identifying characteristics of the true Mashiach. That's why the Jews, Brother Yehuda, can't regard Jesus Christ as the Messiah. But the true Messiah, Yeshua says, I'm the door. Well, who is he? How do you know he's the door? Because he must be identified as by the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So here's the catch-22. You can't have this unless you have this, and you can't have this unless you have this. So at the time that you, recognizing or listening to Yeshua saying, I'm the door.
Nobody opens,
He's the
nobody
door
shuts.
to the understanding the 22 letters of the Hebrew aleph-bet. But the 22 letters of the Hebrew aleph-bet are the key which identifies him as being the true Messiah, hence the door back to Abba. At that time, we wake up. At that time, we don't have to any longer be interred, imprisoned by our delusions.
By the Nicolaitans.
One more last thing about this. He said in the Shema of Deuteronomy 6, Hear, O Israel. That word here is spelled Shin, Mem, and then there's an enlarged Ayin. Shema, Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. And that word Echad is spelled aleph-bet, and an enlarged Dalet. Shema, Echad. If you put the Ayin to the Dalet, it's the word Ayin-Dalet, which is the testimony and witness. That's why in Deuteronomy 6, they call that the Shema. That's the thing you repeat. That's the thing which identifies him as being our Elohim and him Echad. So here's the point. If this Ayin-Dalet is the testimony and the witness of the time that it is to wake up, and we're sitting here talking about the meaning of these words and the meaning of these letters, the correct identity of Elohim being the one represented by the Moed, and that Yeshua being the true Messiah is because he is validated by the Torah, and his teachings corroborate and authenticate and are on the straight path, Ashri, of the Torah, with the Torah. What this means is that in Yod He Vav He, and here's one more last little thing before we run out of time. If you take the letters Yod, He, Vav, and He, and if you say there's 4 voices, and each one of them, here's the voice of the scriptures, here's the voice of the Father, here's the voice of the Son, here's the voice of the Holy Spirit, here's the voice of the church, or some prophetic unction. If they're all different voices,
How did they work?
they're not Echad.
Well, they
But
don't
if you
work
say
either.
if you say there's 4 voices, Yod represents the hand that works. So here's the voice of what you see in creation. The creation speaks of his majesty and glory and the authorship of the one who put the place here. That's a certain type of voice. Here's another voice of the Torah, the written instructions. And here's another voice of the Mashiach, the Vav. Here's Yod, He, Vav. And here's another voice of the Ruach, okay, the Spirit. And when all 4 voices are singular, one, indistinguishable,
In line with
then
each other.
those then Yahweh is Echad. So when the Talmudim, the taught ones, the disciples said to Yeshua, hey, show us the Father and it'll be good for us. And he says, how long have I been with you? Don't you get it? I only say what I hear the Father saying. I only do what I see the Father doing. If you've seen me, you've seen him, because I'm not saying or doing anything different than him. So instead of saying there's 2 different voices, no, there's one voice. And for the He of Yod, He, Vav, He, to represent the Torah, and the other He to represent the Ruach, the Spirit, then you could say, if there's one voice of the Torah and another voice of the Spirit, you got different voices, they're not Echad. Something's wrong. It's not Echad. It's not the same voice of Yod, He, Vav, He. But when the 2 are singular, so that you can't tell the difference if you're reading the Torah or hearing from the Ruach because of the same voice. You can't tell the difference between whether you're listening to the voice of the Father or the Son because they're Echad. And then the voice of the Torah is the voice of Yeshua because he is the Word incarnate, made flesh. And so the Ruach, which only then delivers the same message as the Torah, and the Messiah only speaks the message of the Torah, and what was made into creation is the same message given to us in the Torah. When the 4 voices are Echad, one, we know we can trust that voice. But if you have different Moedim, and if you have a different voice and a different spirit, then what you see that he who built this place, you've got the wrong deity. You've got the wrong Messiah. You've got the wrong spirit. You've got the wrong interpretation. So at the time when it all comes together, the voice of Yod, He, Vav, He is when we wake up.
Right. Well, when you look at that, when we're looking at what's out there today and what we have, and we do have that different teaching, a different voice. It's a completely different voice than what the Torah says that's speaking out there. When we look at that, they say, well, that's because the Torah went away and everything changed, and he's done with the Jews, and now he's dealing with the Christians. Those people really ought to, if that's their theology, they really should be careful of what they're doing, because if he got mad at the Jews and stops them, he might stop with the Christians and start somebody else out there.
Well, there was even the
So,
talk of
I mean,
saying,
that's something to think about if you're on that side of the fence.
there's
I
the
don't think
picture.
about
There's
that.
the picture of the menorah in the Psalmic again, the vine and branches, and he says if the branches are not bearing right fruit. He's going to. Yeshua said, "My father, the husband, is going to break those branches off, cut them off, and throw them into the fire. And even if other branches are grafted on, you think if they're not bearing the right fruit or bearing the right ayin, see, here's another picture of an ayin, is a fruit with a seed within it. So the Psalmic is a picture of the vine and branches, and the next letter in the alphabetical sequence is the ayin, which is a picture of fruit with a seed, that which is going to perpetuate the next
Like
generation.
kind.
Excuse me?
Has to be like kind.
It has to be like kind. It's not genetic modified mutants.
That's what we have now. There's a genetically modified thinking out there with.
So the balanced scales are saying that which goes around is going to come around, and that has to do with the picture of the ayin. That's a whole other thing about this Mishkan pattern. But my point is, if we look here in Daniel 7 and Daniel 12, and you realize this business of the 3.5 years has something to do with the witness and testimony of the time we recognize the truth of the Messiah and the truth of the covenant. Both rabbinical Judaism and both Vaticanal Christianity have gone astray, giving us a false deity because of false testimony.
Could you say that what Daniel is saying, that book is going to be closed until that witness comes about, which we're speaking about right here, until that door is open and we see the Mashiach as he is, that witness?
Validating testimony of the time to wake up, of the time to unseal the Sefer, is when you recognize that the structure of the words of the Messiah, the structure of the words I propose is the Mishkan pattern, which is keyed to the Moedim. If you don't have the right Moedim, you don't have the right key, which means you're still going to be illiterate because you got the wrong structure and the mouth of the words of the Messiah won't open. If Jesus Christ teaches his followers by his Holy Spirit to change the Moedim, it's the wrong key, therefore you've got the wrong Messiah, the words won't open, and you're left in ignorance, which is why the Moedim are critical. They are the identity of the true creator of the heavens and the earth. And the true Messiah must come validating, teaching, and by his Ruach inspiring his taught ones, his Talmudim, his followers, to teach and learn and discuss these matters, which is why this is going on a video, to put these words across the face of the earth as of today, the year 2015, according to our secular calendar. We are doing the very matter of opening this locked Sefer, and the key is the proper Moedim, the testimony and witness of the true Yahweh Elohim Zavot.
Hallelujah.
And that's the identity of Yeshua. If Jesus represents something different, then he's not Yeshua. Because Yeshua is the salvation of Yahweh, and the salvation only comes when the doors opens up for him to be our Elohim according to the prescribed standards of his Torah, his teachings and instructions. The word that he says his testimonies is Ayin-Dalet, aleph-tav, his witnesses, his mitzvot, mem zadi, aleph-tav. Zadi is according to his commandments. And as long as we think that the commandments were done away with and that his witnesses and testimonies have been obliterated by the death of Jesus on the cross, we will be in dark ignorance, unable to cipher the Sefer, because we don't know how to read, because we don't read Hebrew.
And we have clarity that don't know how to read it. Or they translate it to fit what they want to teach.
We have to go back and learn the truth. And the truth is, the 22 letters identify the Messiah, and Yeshua is the one who validates the 22 letters. And if you look at the 22 letters as a description of the Mashiach, you'll understand who the true Messiah is. And the fact that Yeshua, by definition, must be the embodiment in human incarnation of those 22 letters.
Puts a whole new twist on Catch 22. Good discussion, guys.
Very good. Very good. Very good.
Shalom, shalom.